Well, it is a very warm greetings and salutations from me, Lindsay Garvey Jones. I am the Chair of AWTE, the Association of Women Travel Executives. Thank you so much for attending today, and it's with special thanks to TTG Media as well for hosting this rather special edition webinar. Just a quick warning, we are recording the session today, but we won't be able to see your faces, so don't worry, it's just going to be the beautiful panelists that you'll be able to see on the recording. So cameras are optional, but please can you keep your microphones off so we don't get any disturbance from any background noise. Just to set out that we will be chatting for about an hour. We're all very chatty people. God knows how that's going to go. 45 minutes chat with a 15 Q&A at the end. All right. Now, I have always said that you cannot affect change without being in action, and this is what today is all about. Under my chairship, the AWTE will challenge narratives, be a positive disruptor, and bring those conversations to the top of the agenda. Those conversations can sometimes be challenging, difficult to hear, and sessions such as these today will continue to be held to give value, voice, opinion, and greater understanding of what our industry is feeling in current times. By sharing these sessions and reaching a wider audience, it's our hope that what we discuss will become a light to shine on what can be improved, what can be even more effective to support and protect those who work in our fantastic industry. So isn't it about time that we had a session on how on earth parents and grandparents and caregivers manage to cope with raising a family whilst enjoying a career in our industry? And today we have a panel of experts in their fields, so we will hear firsthand on what it's like to be in the industry, to be a challenge, being a caregiver, to be a parent, because our industry is a social one and it does have that expectation that we will travel for work, both domestically in the UK and internationally. So there's a lot to unpack today, which is why we're going to partner up in future for more sessions, because there's a lot to uncover from fertility, adoption, positive well-being, mental health, employers' obligations, and more. So today is a mark in the proverbial sand, and we're going to start that conversation and the discussion on this challenging and sometimes really frustrating topic. And later on, you're going to hear about the brand new initiative, which has just been launched. So I want to introduce the panel, if I can. If I would like to start with Anna, if you can introduce yourself.
Hi there, my name's Anna Perrott. I am Head of Supplier Relations for Panache Cruises.
Vicky.
Vicky Billing, I am Head of Partnerships, Commercial Partnerships for Riviera Travel.
Dan.
I'm Dan Pearce. I'm CEO of TTG Media and delighted to support Lindsay and the AWTE on this very worthwhile exercise.
Debbie.
Hi, I'm Debbie O'Neill. I'm General Manager at Jules Verne. I'm also a coach, a life coach with a focus on coaching within the working environment so that people to work with people so they feel they can bring their true authentic selves into work each day.
Lovely. And Claire.
Hi, I'm Claire Steiner, HR professional, working with a range of clients across the entire sector and out of it as well. So here to hopefully give some advice on the HR issues around this.
Now, it would be remiss of me not to start with a couple of stats, because without data, we can't do anything, and we're going to be collecting lots of data. And I know that the initiative will be looking at that as well. And whilst research says that the future of work doesn't look good for working parents, especially working mothers, because a lot of this data, which comes from multiple sources, demonstrates that working parents are concerned about their children while struggling with that work-life balance, especially if they've had to take a break in their careers. Now, recently, we've heard that childcare costs are going up by at least £1,000. And I've seen posts on LinkedIn from some people saying that they're going to have to earn something ridiculous, like over 100 grand a year in order to achieve childcare for their families, which is just impossible for the majority. Now, 60% of working parents say that if childcare could be subsidised, then they would stay in their current jobs. And 55% say that they would take a pay cut from their company that provided childcare for them. And a massive 81% of parents said that companies' childcare benefits were in fact a key criteria when considering applying for jobs. But one of the most striking things that came out of this data, which is from Forbes, by the way, was that by creating the conditions of a community and having that connectivity, such as this session today, and having groups at work, etc., it can massively improve the well-being of so many caregivers when given that chance to share that lived experience, you know, having working from home and having that greater autonomy on where, when and how people work. It does have many benefits to the quality of life and time with family and children. That certainly does top the list, but we know that this isn't always achievable for our industry, depending on which sector you work in, what role you do. And 69% of working parents feel that they've been able to be more involved and more engaged in their children's lives because of a more flexible working schedule. But I want to come to you first, Anna, if I can. It all started with you. You are the reason that we're here today. Can you share with everybody how that came about and what your experience has been? Because your son has just turned 1.
Yes, yeah. So little Chester has turned 1. I can't believe it. Fastest year ever. So my first baby boy through IVF, and I returned to work after about 6 months. Probably a bit earlier than a lot of other people, but I felt like I was ready to come back. And this whole thing started because there's so many challenges that happen when you come back to work after having a baby. And I was attending events and speaking to other parents, and Vicky and I had a conversation at an award ceremony, and it was hi, how are you? Yeah, I'm good. Are you really okay? And we're both relatively new parents, and there's a lot of new parents in the industry and a lot of parents throughout the whole industry. And it wasn't until we actually said, are you okay? And I was like, no, I'm not. I've had a lot of time away from home. Trying to juggle a home work-life balance has been really difficult. My career means absolutely everything to me, but then I've now got to look after my family as well. So it's been a complete change of lifestyle for me, complete change of everything. So this all came from a tweet. Ultimately, I've loved what AWTE has been doing. I love that it's a voice of the travel industry and the great work that you guys have been doing. But I also feel as if there's not enough people talking about parents within the industry and that home life. So I missed the legendary AWTE lunch. Unfortunately, I gutted. I'll be there this year, 100%. But I sent a tweet saying, great what you guys have done, but why aren't we having conversations about working parents in the travel industry? So here we are. It all started from a tweet, and there's lots and lots of exciting discussions to have off the back of that.
That's brilliant. Thank you. Vicky, I'm going to come to you because I know that when we've spoken, when we've been preparing for this, there was a lot that you'd gone through preparing to be a mother in your pregnancy, and also giving birth to your baby. And you said, you know, sometimes you lost that identity as well of who you actually were, but you were fearful of coming back to work and what other people were thinking about you. Can you tell us more about your experience there?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, when I was pregnant with Ellie, most of you that know me, I had something called HG, which by the way is a separate topic that we'll cover in Back in Time for Bed in time, but it's really debilitating. So I was in hospital for 3 months. I was really poorly, so I had to take a lot of time off work whilst being pregnant. And then when I was due to come back to work, it was complete fear because I'd been off for so long, and I've worked in the travel industry for such a long time, and I'm a relatively confident person. However, I just felt as though I'd lost my confidence, and coming back and trying to juggle, and there was stresses around a new structure at work. And also I was thinking, God, am I the same person when I come back? I know it's crazy, and I think these hormones do drive you to think these crazy thoughts, but I was thinking, am I going to have that baby brain? Am I going to be able to do and work as hard and do exactly what I did before? It's that panic that I absolutely felt. And then there was problems which led to that coming back to work, as in just the whole flexibility of it all. I can look back now, Lindsay, and go, right, I know where I went wrong there, or I know what I needed to do, or I should have been stronger in this area to deal with this better. But yeah, at the time it was really, really challenging, and I felt completely lost, which is another reason why Anna and I are so passionate about our initiative and Back in Time for Bed, because I don't ever want anyone to ever feel like I felt.
You know, it always takes a little bit of crunch time to start something. You know, I said at the start of the presentation, it's like, to affect change, you've got to be in action, and it normally comes to a point of pain when that all starts. Dan, you come at it from a completely different angle, and I want to bring you in here because you're a chief exec, you're a boss, you've got all these people who you employ, and a great number of which are women also. But we're balancing that with you being a proud dad as well. How on earth do you do it?
Yeah, no, thank you, Lindsay, and thank you for recognizing I do bring a different perspective to this to this discussion. It's great that you are involving a working father in this debate too, because you know, dad guilt is a thing as well, and also thank you to Anna actually for introducing this as a topic, because in my 13 years in this industry, I can't recall a session on this topic, you know, at any of the events or conferences that I've been to, and perhaps we should be discussing it more on TTG as well. So thank you for raising it. I think when Lindsay first mentioned this discussion to me, you know, it made me think a lot about my status as a working parent. My beautiful daughter Scarlett is 2 3/4. She'll be 3 in May. So she very much was a big part of my lockdown story, in particular from 2020, and the pressures of that and running a business at the same time. And my overall thought was, many times I feel like I'm not really doing my best in either of those big factors in my life. And I think that's often how we feel as parents. You feel that inadequacy, that you're not contributing as much as you want to in your home life. And then you feel that sometimes home life, you know, stops you from doing certain things that you feel would fulfill your job to the best of your ability. Of course, the flip side of that is that, from my perspective as a parent, I have some fantastic parents working within TTG Media, and I see how much they bring to our business, and a different focus and a different outlook. And I desperately want to encourage both women and men to feel that they can have an effective life working in the media and in travel, and having that home life. And so I try and give the best example of that myself, I guess. And I think within any business, you've got to set the tone at the top. And I think that's really important that I do that at TTG. So yeah, lots of discussion points there, I'm sure, that we'll return to.
And just staying with you, Dan, for a little moment, I remember us talking about the pandemic, you know, that whole trust thing, working from home, because you're at the heart of everything that was going on during the pandemic, and we were relying on you for all the news and updates and everything else. But how do you think, what opportunities do you think came out of that on flexibility for working and trust? That was a big thing.
Yeah, it's true. You know, obviously, we don't need to talk anymore about the negatives of the COVID period, but we can talk about the positives and the good things that came out of that. And I feel that with my employer's hat on, I learned to be a more flexible employer during COVID. And my whole, like in a lot of businesses, you know, our team is working much, much more flexibly than they were pre-2020. And I guess from my point of view as an employer, I learned to trust my team, and it's in a way, in a stronger way than I ever did before. And I think work has become a lot less about presenteeism, about working at your desk or being, you know, in an operation in fixed hours, and it's become a lot more about getting the job done, you know, at whatever time and whatever flexible arrangement suits you. And I think I don't think TTG is the only company that kind of takes that approach now. And I don't think we'd be as far down that road as we are if it hadn't been for COVID.
Absolutely. And Claire, the obligations of an employer in this, whilst the pandemic's given us the gift of flexible working and possibly the trust, there are still some companies out there, and, you know, again, I don't want to be on the negative, but what is it that companies are not doing in order to facilitate good childcare benefits or having that flexibility? What do you think needs to happen? Is it too formulaic? Are we still looking in the past from this 1960s, 70s, 80s way of working?
Yeah, I think to a degree there is, because we're the sort of the whole statutory law around maternity and paternity leave is very fixed, and so employers have to tick a lot of boxes, as do actually the employees. You know, there are certain things, and I know all the parents here will know, you know, you've got to give certain amounts of time notice for certain things to happen. But I think, you know, a lot of employers sometimes aren't flexible working it to one side, actually think of it as one size fits all, and it just doesn't. And I think, you know, we've had this conversation so many times about how you can fix so many problems in the workplace around communication, and actually just having the opportunity for people to be able to speak up and to be able to be heard. And I think there is a difference between those two. And I think that a lot of today's employers, yes, they've embraced flexible working. They can't get away from the argument about presenteeism and not working because they're not at their desk anymore, which is great. But actually, they're still not thinking about the benefits of, when I say true flexibility, of allowing people to actually work the hours they need to do around their other commitments. And actually, if you do that, you're going to have much more loyal staff. You're going to have people who are going to be bending backwards to really try and, you know, fit in the work that they know they need to do, having those choices, giving them more choices. And, you know, and I'm delighted that Dan's here, but any partner, you know, that's having the same issues around trying to support, and not forgetting, of course, we also have a lot of single parents out there. So as I said, one size doesn't fit all. So you've got to be open to those conversations that allow you to stay in the law, but actually enhance the, I guess, the whole experience, because you should be celebrating this. This should be a celebration. It shouldn't be a tick box exercise.
Do you know, I was talking to Claire whilst driving north, so we had a couple of hours on the phone, and both of us, admittedly not parents, but we were so passionate about, we were like, and we were getting quite heated in the discussion over what actually needs to change. And we were talking about all of this different cover and, you know, legislation. And it starts with all of that, the language that's used in some of the legislation over the bare minimum that some employers actually get away with, you know, that all of that needs to change. You know, we live in a society now where the demographic of a family, the dynamicism of a family now are made up of, you know, same-sex parents, single parents, people who are adopting or fostering, etc. And we're in 2023 and it just doesn't seem to be moving along. But there are some changes being made, isn't there? There's a new thing coming later in the year. Can you shine a light on that for us next?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's always a couple of positives. On the 3rd of April, I think it is officially, the statutory payments go up. And actually this year has been quite a big hike for statutory maternity pay. I think I've just got it here actually. Yes, it's going up, where are we? I think to £172 a week.
Woo!
Woohoo, up from 150. That's, well, hey, but you know, and I'm sure there will be other business owners here. You know, you can't often afford to enhance maternity pay, so actually you need to sort of think about what else you can do outside of that. I think the other big thing that I think is really great is the protection of people's employment, and the law is changing this year, which means that women who are pregnant or on maternity leave cannot be dismissed or made redundant, with certain exceptions. And those certain exceptions would be, unfortunately, if you say a business closed, so there is no job, so that would be it. But actually it's adding protection onto that, and also when they come back to work as well. So they'll have a period after they come back to work where they will be safe, because I think the good news is it means that the lawmakers are recognizing that there is a different, I guess, process and a depth to what happen for those mums and the protection of new mums in particular. So there's some positive stuff there, and I think we'll see more. I do think that is changing. I mean, I was laughing, we were talking about the archaic way of you know, the sort of the bureaucracy, which unfortunately has to happen at a government level. But you have your EWC, which is your expected week of childbirth. But as long as 10 years ago, probably, it used to stand for the expected week of confinement.
And hereby is the lesson that we need to change some of the language that we're using. Oh, it's just,
I know.
Mind. You know, something that does strike me from the gender pay gap situation is that we have some incredibly talented and experienced women who drop out of the labour market because they can't afford childcare costs. You're met with this conundrum of, can I afford to go back to work? What's the situation here? And I think that employers can do a lot more around this. What do you think that employers could be doing better in the world?
It's quite interesting. So there used to be a salary sacrifice for childcare vouchers, and unfortunately you haven't been able to get those for about 14 years. But there are some other tax incentives which actually I think are benefit. And I've been working with a non-travel client recently, and they're putting in place a workplace nursery scheme. Now, this doesn't mean that you're suddenly going to have a creche in the workplace, but what it does allow, and a lot of the big benefits providers are starting to move in this, is it allows you to sacrifice salary to work with and to supply, to help pay for your nursery, and it actually saves you a huge amount of money because it's done before tax, and it's great for the employers as well. And there's a number of other benefits around it. But I think for those of you, for employers and for staff, just have a look at the workplace nursery scheme, because there are some real win-wins for both the employer and for the employee. And I think these are the sorts of things that it doesn't matter the size of your company that you need to be looking at, because it's a little bit of admin for a lot of goodwill and a lot of benefits, tax benefits. So that's something that I think we hopefully will start seeing a lot more of. And I think, you know, the challenge you also have is that, again, because of the gender pay gap, a lot of the parental leave and the shared parental leave isn't happening as effectively, because the fathers are having to give up quite a lot of money to be able to take the shared parental leave if their companies don't give them a nice paternity or maternity enhancement to their pay. So, you know, we're not, with the dads and the other partners are losing out on that opportunity of having time during those formative years.
Didn't I read somewhere that there's only 2% of Britons that have taken this up?
Yeah. It's and also, to be fair, in the moment someone says to me, oh, I want to talk to you about shared parental leave, I'm like, oh my God, no, because it is the red tape is unbelievable around it as well. So they need to make things that a lot better. They need to enhance paternity pay. It's so important, you know, that's even before we get into the whole gender pay gap.
Oh my goodness me, it kind of goes into the too difficult box, doesn't it? It's like, oh, I'll deal with that later. Debbie, you've been very patient and you've been quietly waiting in the wings here. I do want to bring you in at this point because it's something that has jumped out at me, especially since we've spoken, but since Anna and Vicky launched the initiative, and I've been reading some of the stories on there, and there's some common threads that come through. Now, when we were speaking, you were talking to me about emotional hygiene. Tell us more about emotional hygiene and the stuff that we can do to make things better on ourselves, because the pressure that people feel, parents feel, to be perfect, because they see it all over social media that, you know, Mother Earth and I'm getting everything right. Nobody's getting it right. So talk to us about emotional hygiene and what you mean by that.
I think that first thing I think we were talking a bit about employers, and I think the reality is there's lots of really caring employers out there who want to do the right thing. The trouble is there are emotions at play here and pressures that we put on ourselves, and that will be different from person to person. So it will be difficult for an employer to cover off all of that. And I think some of that is around just overwhelm and exhaustion. Some of it, the dots go back to our childhood. You know, we want to give our children or child the same childhood that we had. More often than not, we want them to have a different experience in their childhood because we're trying to do better. And that's typically how things work as we go through the generations. But I think it's what is really can be really powerful is awareness. I think for parents to be, it's like Anna said right at the beginning, are you okay? We all say we're okay most of the time, but actually a lot of the time we're not okay. So I think it's having the awareness about why we're feeling the way we're feeling, because it will be different for different people. That's not going to be a blanket kind of approach for every single parent. So the awareness is key, I think. And I think in terms of emotional hygiene, the thing to bear in mind with any emotions about anything, what we tend to do as human beings is we tend to kind of suppress those emotions, or we repress them, which is even worse, which is pushing emotions down that we kind of don't even, we're not even aware are there. And it's like I talk in coaching about this beach ball effect. If you're in the sea with the beach ball and you're kind of trying to push it down under the water and it never really goes away. And actually, the harder you push it down, the more chance you've got of it kind of popping up and hitting you in the face. And I think that's how emotions work for us as human beings. And they don't go anywhere. If you've got these emotions, you need to deal with them. So I think emotional hygiene is just really, really important. And I think it's not something that we necessarily talk about a lot. People generally are quite busy, particularly parents. They're too busy being busy and feeling guilty to think about those emotions and how they can deal with them. I mean, I know that hopefully we'll talk a little bit about journaling, Lindsay, today. But I think that, when it comes to looking after ourselves, I think that's really key in this piece, because when it comes to our families, they are the most important people in the world to us. They are completely irreplaceable. I think we owe it to them to give them the best version of ourselves and not the anxious, overwhelmed, cranky version. And so it's really important to focus on what we need to be okay. So rather than going from day to day not being okay, it's thinking about what do we need to be okay. And that will be different for different people. For some people, it could be making sure we get 8 or 9 hours sleep a night. For others, it could be half an hour on the Peloton each day. It could be reading, a bubble bath, studying, spending time with parents, siblings, or whatever. So I think that one really good thing that is focusing on needs. If you sit down with a piece of paper and a pen and even think of 4 things that you feel that you actually need, and make sure that you get those things, that can help enormously, I think, with managing those emotions and kind of being aware and looking after yourself.
Yeah, definitely. I do want to dive in. Oh, yes, Claire, please.
Well, I just wanted to very quickly add to that. So I completely agree with Debbie. And I think those 4 things actually can also help inform the conversations you need to have with your workplace. Because that goes back to what I was saying about not one size doesn't fit all. And for some people, it may be that they need to be there when the child comes home. They want to pick them up from nursery or from school, but then they're quite happy to go back to work and work 3 or 4 hours in the evening once the child's at bed. And it'll be totally different for other people. And actually, it's amazing if you want to look after your staff and you want to keep those staff in your business, how flexible you should be and can be when you start thinking about it.
Yeah, and I guess a lot of caregivers might feel a bit fearful and not get a bit tongue-tied knowing where to start. So I think by writing things down, it helps you to formulate an agenda and stick to it when you're trying to articulate what it is that you want to your employer, because not everybody has the best experience at work. We are getting better at it, but this session today really is going to underpin the foundation of what both Anna and Vicky are going to go on and do, which are majestic things. Thank you for that, Claire. Just going back to journaling, you hit on that word earlier, journaling. Now, not many people will understand what it is, because when you and I were talking about it, it was like everybody kept a diary when they were small, the things that you did, the places you went, etc. My 5-year diary had a little lock and you kept it under, lock and key. But journaling's something different when you're an adult and when you're trying to make sense of what's going on in here, because this is what feels overwhelming, which can put a stop to the sensibility that you want to go on and do. Can you tell us just how people can start journaling, because it feels awkward at first?
It does. I think journaling is one of those things that you need to do it to really understand why it helps and how it can help. And I think my recommendation would be to treat yourself to a really nice notebook. And when you're writing, when you're journaling, it isn't a diary entry. It's not, yesterday I had steak for my tea or whatever. It's just not that at all. It's what I call steady stream of consciousness writing. You don't type it because you need to have that motion of pen to paper to tap into a different part of your brain, and it is an absolute brain dump. And you are just writing anything that comes into your head, and you don't stop writing even if you can't think of what to say, and you just keep going and you keep going. I would recommend people do 3 pages of A4 size paper. You need to have a good, I know whenever I've done journaling, it seems to be in the last half of the page where I notice the real stuff coming out, you know, where you're really kind of getting to the core of what's going on for you. But it's hugely helpful. Much of it will be waffle. It will mean nothing, but you will find yourself writing things that take you by surprise. And largely, you know, if you think we all have, what, about 50,000 thoughts a day, 80% of them are negative. So you kind of largely, perhaps it will be waffle, but you almost kind of get to know yourself through doing that exercise, and you'll see those little golden nuggets in there. And hopefully what you'll also find yourself doing is giving yourself a little bit of a break and being kinder to yourself, because you've got everything muddled up here, but you realize that actually you are a really good parent and you are trying your best, and that's really all you can do. So I think it's hugely helpful, and I think the best time to do that is first thing in the morning, because then you haven't got all the thoughts of the day kind of getting in your head.
Sure. This question I'm going to aim at Dan, Anna and Vicky. And when we were talking together as a group preparing for this, it became very apparent to me that all of you had this same thing, which was you were all looking at other people in the industry going, why have you got it nailed? You know, Anna, what are your thoughts on that? And what advice can you give to people listening when you're looking around going, oh God, what's going on?
I think it's don't believe everything you see on social media. It looks like you're cool, calm and collected. You know, you can look like super mum. You can have the most organic meals ready for your child, and yet you've been at a work event and you've done this and you've done that. But ultimately, there's a parent in there that has some form of guilt. They're thinking about the washing. They're panicking that are they performing well enough at work? They've then maybe let their friends down because they've not reached out to their friends so much. There's so many other things that's probably going on within somebody's head. So don't believe everything that you're seeing on socials, because everybody's only ever going to post the positive. Everybody only ever posts that. And that's where I really want to bring this forward, obviously, with our new initiative is actually posting, do you know what? I've had a rubbish day. I've been stuck on the M6 for hours. I haven't made it back in time for bed. I haven't managed to do what I wanted to do. You know, I haven't managed to get to my child's school play. Something's cropped up along the way. So everybody ultimately in life is on their own journey. Everybody's journey is different. And I think what's amazed me from us launching our initiative, everybody is in the same boat. We're all parents, or it's employers that want to learn more about our initiative. But everybody has a different story, which I think is absolutely incredible. So to have a different story, and it's amazing to hear all of that, but then somebody can relate to something from there, somebody can relate. So for me, it's just talking. So don't believe everything on social media that people are putting out there. And also just have open conversations. If you're having a rubbish day, tell someone you're having a rubbish day. Be open, be honest, because there's going to be somebody out there somewhere, or somebody to rely on. And everybody's mental health is really, really important with this. And when children are involved, you're not only having to think about yourself, but you're thinking about a little one, which is also an added pressure, which will always be on in the back of your mind. So in my eyes, the more that we talk about this as an industry, the more we talk about it to our friends, we talk about it to our family, that this will all become a far easier conversation to have in the future, and people won't be so scared to talk about different parts of parenting or work life or any part of caregiving.
Brilliant. Amazing. Dan, what about you from both sides? I know that this is something that perhaps might be a bit of a male thing as well in our industry. You know, you look at your peers and you're trying to do your best and you're trying to perform. And also from a TTG point of view, you're very aligned to your values. So making sure that everybody has equality and equity within TTG Media. How do you get all of that together?
Yeah, I guess, and I was listening to what Anna said, and I agree with everything you said, and I'd extend that to leaders of businesses and leaders of teams, anyone in a management role. I think it's really important to show your vulnerability in this area, and I think maybe, in a sense, we're fortunate to be working in the age that we're in the even probably 10 years ago. It wasn't talked about, so much, obviously this area, but actually just being a vulnerable leader. And that's much more accepted now, and that ability to be open. Yes, there are a lot of alpha males in our sector that maybe wouldn't go down this road, but I think for my personal situation, I don't think anyone would describe me as an alpha male. Fortunately, I think it's very important to show my vulnerability to my team, and that sets the tone. And to have an open culture where it's okay to talk about these things, both from a female point of view and from the male point of view. And I really hope that that's what we're achieving. And I haven't led this actually, but recently there's been some initiatives around mental health within our business that have come from the team. And now, for example, we are doing when people are around, we're doing twice weekly walk and talks around our local office, where we're encouraged to talk about anything other than work. And we also have like a monthly network for the team now. Similarly, encouraged to be open and talk about what's going on outside of work, and all of those are just kind of building blocks to creating that open culture, I think. And yeah, I mean, just learning, and even me, I'm participating in this call, I'm also learning actually, and listening to what's going on, and there's already a couple of things that I'm going to explore further within my team as a result of this.
That's really good to know. Vicky, we've spoken before about, especially with Debbie, on how you're constantly apologizing for stuff, not you personally, but parents as a whole. It's always like, oh, I'm really sorry, I need to be XYZ, I'm going to be late, I'm really sorry, I'm going to be late because of this, I'm really sorry, I need to go. In your experience, what advice would you give to employers even when this happens? Because, inevitably you have a family, it's unpredictable and things do happen. Life's life.
And I think that's key, isn't it? The communication piece that Anna and Dan have just been saying, being completely honest, being able to talk about how you're feeling, but you need to feel in that safe space that you can talk to your employer about it. But also it's like, that's a brilliant idea that Dan's doing around, and I bet it's a little bit awkward at first, Dan. People are like, oh, I suppose we're so used to talking about work, what can we talk about? I mean, I probably wouldn't find it a problem, I'd have a list, but hey ho. But in general, it could be. And I think that's a really good initiative, because you want people, you want your line manager to ask how you are, is everything okay? But you want to feel as though that you can also give back, and you can be completely honest and talk about how you're feeling. I feel guilty all the time about Ellie, and yes, I apologize. I've probably apologized already on this call. I think it's just what we do, isn't it? And it's not right. We shouldn't have to. We absolutely shouldn't have to. And I wish at the beginning, when I'd have came back from maternity leave, that I would have been a bit more honest and talked about how I was feeling, because I definitely think that would have helped them if we'd have had a support group to be able to share those things. But the learnings as well from this, what Debbie's talked about with the emotional hygiene, I love that as well. And the journaling, like that's a big deal, and that would really help. I dread to think the amount of things that I could write down. But we do, but we need to stop saying sorry. I was about to say sorry, I'm going on, but we need to stop saying sorry.
No, it's very true. And to stay on the positive, Claire, because I'm very aware that there's a lot of Q&A coming in, by the way, there's people, and we'll get round to that in a moment. But Claire, what does good look like? What do you think that employers need? What are your top tips? If you had a wish list and you said, come on, everybody, we need to really start looking at XYZ. What top tips have you got for employers around childcare, when pregnancies are announced, when people want to talk to them about fertility and adoption and things like that, when starting a family? Go for it.
Okay, so I think the first thing is to create that open space, that a sense of you're not going to be judged whatever you come to. So communication always is going to be the starting point for this. As I said earlier, it's a celebration, so people need to know that whatever they come and talk about it, they're not going to have that judgment. They're not going to have to apologize for wanting a family. They're not going to have to apologize for wanting to take a whole year off work. So I think that's the key starting point. A lot of our businesses in our sector don't have an HR function because they're small. So again, but what those businesses tend to have is a better team and better communication as a result, because they all know each other really well. So there are pluses and minuses to having that sort of HR person, if you like. And I would hope that the businesses that do have HR do have that facility whereby, you know, they will be open and we'll take them through it. So I think it's having clear sort of questions and answers as much as you can in what the company does to support. Businesses, I think, need to, and I think this is where I'm sure TTG can help, and I know the AWTE will be, is I guess shouting about businesses that are doing a good job, you know, giving people the opportunity to see what their competitors are doing. We live in an age where we're always going on about the recruitment crisis. You know, there's never been, in some respects, a better time to really reflect and think, how can we do more to keep the staff that we have, to look after them, and then also to encourage new people into our business, and things like, you know, you just cannot underestimate the importance of good parental leave and parental care. So I think those are key things. I think, you know, as I said, one size does not fit all, and everyone, and we've heard this, is going to go through their own journey. So there's so much information out there. I know that one of the things that will be great about this group that Anna and Vicky put together is we'll be able to share best practice and just give people hints and tips, and that's really good. So what good looks like are employers who open the door, who are excited for you, who will support you. People will also start I guess reflecting that in how they stay with employers and the attraction they have, the employer branding. It doesn't take long for people to know who's good and who's not. I think also the other thing they need to do is just also be aware that for a lot of returning mums, they've had a year out of the office, right? And a lot changes in the year, particularly in our sector. So how do we make sure that we keep in touch in the right way? And again, that's going to be different for everybody. Some people, you know, depending on their circumstances, might not have the ability to come in and have their 10 keeping in touch days. But there are ways that you can keep in touch, and you need to make sure that those mums still feel a part of that business and understand the changes and what's going on. And when they come back, recognize that they're going to have a challenge, because people who might have actually worked at a different level to them might have been promoted above them in that year. You know, the relationships change. So it's just how you then re-onboard them back into the business, I think would be that would be what good likes, is just being aware of that and being sensitive to that. And Dan mentioned about vulnerability, and I think one other positive from the pandemic has been a lot of the leaders in our industry have shown their vulnerability, and I hope that they don't change. I hope that they keep that vulnerability open, because I think that with that comes empathy and openness.
Amen to that. Debbie, I've got a question for you. There are some questions coming in. There are people who are doing so well at spinning plates. They've got roles within the industry, either full-time or part-time. And people are finding themselves feeling guilty at work for not being there. And then when they are there, they feel guilty for not being at work. Top tips, 2 or 3 top tips on how to stop this from being in your head.
Yeah, I mean, guilt is a negative emotion. Right? And my worry with guilt is around us doing wrong by others, is quite closely linked to shame. So that you can go on that spiral there where the sense of shame is about how you feel about yourself. And I think, again, it's awareness. I think saying something out loud has an incredible power. And I'm not talking about having a bit of a moment where you have a bit of a meltdown, but actually sitting down with somebody and talking through how you're feeling or why you're feeling guilty, and hearing yourself say it out loud to somebody who is really listening to you, and that gives you that space to say all that stuff, will help you to process and help you to realise why you're feeling so guilty. And I think going back to the saying sorry is an admission of guilt. So we say sorry as a bit of a coping mechanism for dealing with these competing priorities. It's an admission of guilt, so you kind of spiral right back round to that. But I think, yeah, the real, you need to sit down, talk about it, be listened to help you to process. It will be different for different people. There's the reasons why you're feeling that way.
You think with that, sorry, Lindsay.
No, go ahead. Okay.
The way I try and think about this now as well, and I was chatting to one of my colleagues only at the weekend, and you go to work and you are thinking about your baby a lot as well, and you're thinking about work, and then same at home, can I get it asleep so I can crack back on with my day? Isn't it a case, somebody said something to me the other day, you know, when you're at work, be at work, and it sounds simple, doesn't it? But when you're at home, be at home. And those of us that bring our work home and work from home know what I mean by that. So be present, be at home. Don't be, oh, I'm trying to multitask. I've tried to do it with Ellie myself. Sometimes on a Sunday, I think I'll get a couple of hours in and I'm trying to play with her at the same time. And I think that's a key thing. How do you get it right? I'm no expert, but...
Oh, she's frozen. That's okay. We'll put her in a Disney film. I think that's about having strong boundaries, isn't it? And really saying it's okay to close off this part of my life and be present with this part of my life. And I guess boundaries are something that you really have to create a habit around, because again, it feels really strange and awkward at times. I've had another question in from the audience just saying that they've had a real career break and finding it really jarring to get back into that workplace angle. What top tips has anybody got for coming back into the workplace when you've been taking that career break?
One thing I would say is don't underestimate the new skills that parents bring with them. And I think, you know, a lot of people forget that actually you are becoming much better at your time management, at your problem solving, at negotiation. We all know that. I mean, I've got enough nieces and nephews to know about negotiating with a 3-year-old. So I think there's an awful lot of stuff that you need to, you know, stop that imposter syndrome going and recognize that you've got all your experience previously, but you're bringing a whole new set of skills to it. And I think that the big challenge, and I can't speak as a non-parent, and I'm sure we'll hear from the others, is actually how you keep in touch with the workplace. And we are lucky that we work in an industry where we have a lot of pals, but I think that's another challenge itself. But I'll shut up for now and let others speak.
Never shut up. It's fine. They're just coming in thick and fast, and I really appreciate the fact that the audience are putting in so many complex questions here. On recruitment, when people are going for a new job, they want to talk freely and openly about having a family, and yet they feel, again, a bit juxtaposed whether or not they do that, because if they don't get the job, will the employer then think, oh, is it going to be a discrimination thing? Have they not got the role on that? And it's a little bit of a sorry state, because we should be looking, like you said, as a celebration, and that family is, you know, going to be part of the business, etc., in terms of an employee. Any advice for anybody who is going for another role on how they can talk about families when they're being interviewed for a job?
I think talking about it really positively and confidently, and not the whole, because sometimes when we talk about these things, we can have an energy about us. It's like, oh gosh, I almost don't want to say this. But I think just be, as honest and open as you can be, and talk about it in a really confident way, like Claire and you both said about being celebration. And Anna was talking about IVF. I went through IVF. I think being a parent is an absolute privilege, and it's denied to so many people. So my feeling on that is go for the interview, and if you don't get the job on the basis that you've spoken about being a parent, do you really want to work at that organisation?
Exactly.
I don't think I would.
Yeah.
Oh, this is brilliant. There are a lot of our attendees who are saying this is an amazing session. I think what it's done is it's opened up the box. It's a safe space, and I think this will carry on. The majority of some of the things that we've got on here is about guilt, which you've addressed, Debbie, and it comes from a more deep-rooted sense. I don't think there is a one thing that can answer and take away everybody's guilt. It's something that we have to manage and kind of control ourselves in some way. We've got 10 minutes left.
Can I just add on that last point as well, around people going for interviews, talking whether they're comfortable to talk about it. As someone that does quite regularly interview people for jobs, I'm always fascinated to hear people's personal stories, and it makes them, you know, more of a real person, if you like, when you're bringing somebody into a business. And I think incredibly important, you know, to be honest and transparent, and just echoing that if a potential employer, you know, sees that as a negative, that is not the sort of company that people should be working for. And I think, you know, overall there needs to be a broader recognition that having children does not put a freeze on your career where you are in terms of your development and the company that you work for, but is actually additional motivation, you know, to continue to develop. And just finally on that point, employing working parents is good for business, you know, and I don't know if there are statistics around that, but it's not all about being a kindly, lovely, altruistic employer. It's also because it's good for business, you know, to keep employing and keep developing the very best people who are working parents.
You are not wrong. On LinkedIn, I see very regularly a certain company in our industry who have board meetings for their children. And they are invited in and they are given a problem to solve. And it is enormously fantastic at what falls out of that. Because sometimes when you think about diversity and inclusivity, have we ever heard it from a young person's mind? No matter, they give the most simple, honest answers. So making children part of the business is such an eye-opener. It's brilliant. But also some of the questions that have come in are more statements as well, saying that it's to be led from the top down. So if you've got leadership who are male and they're leaving for the school run, that has more of a, oh, we can do that here. This is brilliant. You know, it almost gives permission for other people to do same. So I think it is down to a lot of leaders as well to kind of do as they want to do, you know, and not be fearful of breaking that old formula, which is quite fantastic. But again, thank you to everybody who's putting in all of these questions. It's absolutely fantastic, but a lot of them are roundabout guilt. Maybe that's something that we can address in another session or on the initiative, which then brings me quite nicely, segue in, saving the best till last. It was announced last week. Huge congratulations. It's epic. Well done to both of you, Anna and Vicky, for Back in Time for Bed. Please share with us how people can find you, what you're going to be doing on there. What's your plan?
So we've launched a Facebook group last Friday, which is a community really. So this is for anybody that works in any parts of the travel industry. And we want to have this community where we can offer out support for all of those working parents. We also want to invite employers into the group so that then they can learn about other people's stories. We can talk about pretty much everything. The topics are endless, as what we've touched on here: fertility treatment, adoption, single parents, parental leave, grandparents, everything. We can pretty much talk about anything that we want to in there. What we want to do from the back of that is obviously raise more and more awareness for working parents, and for leaders to then be able to think, well, actually, yeah, I can be a bit more vulnerable. I can talk about this stuff. This group has gone mental since Friday, since we launched it. We've got nearly 500 members, and we've had well over 60 individual posts from people actually talking about their families, their children, and how they feel at work. Vicky and I have had messages in our inboxes saying, I'm on maternity leave, I'm really struggling, I'm worried about going back to work. Just thank you. This is a community that we can all speak together and we can talk about the goods, the bads. What I want to do, and what Vicky and I want to do, is actually celebrate the companies that are doing it really, really well. And we want people to come forward with that. We want them to say, X company's doing this, they're doing a board meeting and they've brought their kids in. Let's celebrate that. This company offers lots of different working opportunities. And so that we can, then others can learn from that. But it's a nice, open, happy space that people can relate to. So for us, it's gone mad really quickly, and we want to build on that. So what we will be doing is we'll be launching a website, backintimeforbed.co.uk. And Vicky and I will have this website, and the fact that we'll have easy links for people to get to if they're struggling with childcare costs. We can help talk about tax. HR. We've also partnered with Travel, where they will be helping employers, and that they'll offer half an hour's impartial advice for free as to what you can do to help your business, or if there's any issues there. So we want to give this community really within travel. Travel's an amazing community anyway, but let's talk about those that are associated or employing people with families, and give them a network to talk in as well.
I think there's so much on there, honestly. Anna's covered it all, and the only other thing I'd say is it's not just for those young parents either. It's for everyone, like the guardians, carers, grandparents. Like, it's unbelievable some of the advice that I can see on there already that I'm like, oh, I never thought of that. Or I was a bit tearful with some of the comments as well last week. WhatsApp and Emma say, oh my God, this is amazing. But thank you everybody that supported us so far. It means the world, and you know, we just want to continue with this quest and exciting things to come.
Absolutely. Congratulations to both of you for starting the much needed initiative. I think from an employer's perspective as well, it would be good to have a look and see what people's shared lived experiences are also. So that's brilliant. A lot of what's coming on here, and you can have this for your future topics, is childcare costs. That seems to be a biggie on here as well. You know, there are people who are saying, why should I go back to work when I can't afford XYZ? Yet we've got these really talented, experienced people. We don't want to lose them. So that is a really good topic also for your group. Just to finish off, because this has been an amazing session. We could stay on here all afternoon and talk about stuff. I would like your top 3 tips, if I can, from your area of expertise. And Debbie, I'm going to start with you. Your top tips on well-being and this emotional hygiene, which I absolutely love.
Yeah, I think that the talk, and this is why I think Back in Time for Bed is so good, that safe space where you can sort of see what other parents are going through. So I think it's the awareness and talking to people. I think it's the fact, you know, kind of joining this group will be fantastic, because you're going to feel less isolated when you can see, because I think that's half the problem, just kind of feeling that it's just you, and you can actually see that it's not just you. And I think it has to be journaling, because I think that is a really good way to kind of do that brain dump and get all of those emotions and thoughts that are going on inside your head out of your head. And if you do it on a regular basis, you'll really start to notice the difference. Absolutely. Dan, I'm going to come to you. 3 top tips from you as a dad or an employer, or both?
I don't know where to begin, really. There's so much. But just briefly, something I think Vicky said earlier about separating your work life from your home life. If you can do it, it's incredibly important. And I know sometimes I've got home and I've been with Scarlett and it's lovely, and then I've whipped out my phone and I'm going through my emails. What have I missed? And you know, I'm so hard trying to stop doing that, but that's so important. So I think that's key. I think that second point we've talked around openness and vulnerability. You know, not everyone has a boss or a manager or a culture where they feel they can, but if you don't really try and push for that in your organization. And I guess thirdly, something I've always tried to say to my team, and hopefully they recognize this, is just to remember that we don't live to work, we work to live, and what we do at work, we achieve great things to make our families proud of us, and to bring home the money to support us, and always get that the right way round. Love it. Claire?
I think to employers, you will get more out of your staff if you work with them, and is that not one size fits all? So and think of innovative ways. You know, we are still, a lot of businesses are still struggling coming out of the pandemic, but there are ways that actually can benefit the business that isn't going to cost them an arm and a leg. So you know, take the time to look at that, and again, listen to your parents, because they may have the solutions that you're not aware of.
Perfect. And least but by no means last, both of you two who have given every success to this Back in Time for Bed. Vicky?
It's similar to what people have said, but my biggest thing would be communication. Please communicate, and to lead on to that, so speak to your line manager, speak to your friends, speak to your colleagues, but also join back into, sorry, I am dying with my COVID. Well, I'm not dying, but you know, I'm struggling. Join back in time for bed. Honestly, the support, we need you, you need us. It's all about being together. And I know that sounds a bit cheesy, but it'll work. I genuinely feel that, looking at what we're getting so far, I genuinely feel that. Anna, do you want to take it from there? Is there anything to add?
Yeah, so just simply talking, just remembering that everyone's on their own journey, and talk to them, and ultimately everybody's in this together as such. But my main part, and for me, and I don't know whether there's any other parents that can relate to this, but don't forget, you are your own person. You've got these little children or older children, and your whole life revolves around them and what you're doing, but don't forget there's you as well. And it's very easy to lose who you are when you become a parent. So don't forget, there is that time for you away from work, away from being a parent. Ultimately, you still need that because you're still an individual. So make some time for you as well.
Oh, that's incredible. Thank you to each and every one of our fantastic panelists. We've only scratched the surface today, and I'm more than delighted with how the session has turned out, judging by some of the comments and questions that have come in. We'll make sure that we keep your questions and comments to give to both Anna and Vicky, and I'm sure they'll do something brilliant with them in terms of addressing them as a wider topic as well. But for everybody who's attended, thank you so much. The recording will be available on TTG Media's website, along with AWTE as well. But thank you so much to Claire, to Debbie, to Dan, to Anna and Vicky, and we wish you every success with Back in Time for Bed. Thank you for joining us, and we will be seeing you very soon. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks for asking me.
Bye.